this video, we'll continue with how to solve quadratic equations using the completing the square method. So if we take a look at number 11 in your note, and we have our steps, the first step is we always want our leading coefficient to be 1. So that means the number in front of the x squared, we want it to be 1. So to do that, step 1, we're going to go ahead and divide all the terms by 2. So then we have x squared minus 6x plus 15 equals 0. That was step 1. Step 2, we want to move the constant on its own side to isolate it from the x term. So we're going to go ahead and subtract 15 to both sides. So again, this is step 2. So now we have x squared minus 6x equals negative 15. Step 3, I like to do this in a very organized manner. I'm going to do it on the side here. Step 3 is I'm going to divide the number in front of the x. We call that the b value. So this number right here. We're going to divide that number by 2. And then step 4 is we are going to square this value. So step 4 says to square that number. So take that negative 3 and square it, and we would get 9. And then step 5 is we're going to add that number to both sides. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. Whatever we do to one side, we want to do to the other side. So negative 15 plus 9, that would be negative 6. Now the whole purpose in doing these steps is to be able to get to step 6, which is to factor in such a way that we get a square like this. So we want the same thing times the same thing, just like up here. That's our goal in why we did this. So we have to think of what multiplies to 9 and adds to negative 6. And if we did all of this right, it should be this number right here. So negative 3 times negative 3 would multiply to 9 and would add to this number here. So that means we can write it as x minus 3 times x minus 3. And why did we want that? So that way we can write it as a square. Now moving forward, we're going to use our part 1 video notes of this section, which says we can square both sides. And when we square both sides, we need to put a plus or minus into the problem. And again, the whole purpose or why we can do this is because the index here is 2, and 2 will go into this 2 once. So this will undo, leaving us just x minus 3. And now we need to simplify this radical. So the answer to this is not a real number, right? So we have no real solution to this problem because you can't square root a negative. But in this class, and moving forward, we are allowed to have complex numbers. So that's how I know. So after my class, you would need to ask your teacher, are we working in the complex number system or just the real number system? So since we now know how to simplify radicals with negatives, we could split this up as square root of 6 times square root of negative 1, because we learned last chapter that we can put an I in place of a square root of negative 1, and then we would have the square root of 6. Now, you can leave it like this, but I prefer to put the I in the front here, so that way it doesn't look like it's in the radical. So I prefer to have plus or minus I rad 6. So you're not going to put the I here. If you put the I before the plus or minus, then it's being added. It's supposed to be multiplied. It's multiplied, not added. So that's why the I has to just flip right in front of the square root there. You don't have to, that's just how I'm going to do it. And then we're going to add 3 to both sides. And again, the 3 can go in the front or it can go after. You can probably guess where I'm going to put it in the front. So again, it doesn't get confused as being in the radical. So I'm going to do positive 3 and then the plus or minus. And then that would be our solution. So the exact answer would be 3 plus or minus I rad 6, and then we would not approximate this since we got an imaginary number. Okay. Since we have a radical in our answer and an imaginary number, that is our clue here that this could not have been if you had tried to factor this, you couldn't. Alright, let's go ahead and try one more here. And let's follow our steps here. So step 1, we want the term in the front, the leading coefficient, to be positive 1. So we're going to go ahead and divide everything by 3. So now we have x squared minus 2/3 x minus 5/3 equals 0. And then so that was step 1. Step 2 is we're going to move the 5/3. We're going to get rid of the negative 5/3 by adding 5/3 to both sides. So we get the x term together here. And then step 3, I'm going to do this on the sides so that I'm very organized. So step 3, I want to divide the coefficient of the x. So I want to divide this number in front of the x. Step 3, I want to take negative 2/3 and divide it by 2. So negative 2/3 divided by 2. So negative 2/3 divided by 2 is negative 1/3. Okay, now step 4 is to square that negative 1/3. I'm going to take the negative 1/3 and square it. So I'm going to go ahead and square it. And we get 1/9. So then step 5 is to add this number to both sides. So I'm going to take the 1/9 and add it to both sides. That would be step 5. So I'm going to go over here and do 5/3 plus 1/9. And I don't want mixed numbers, so I go to second ABC. And we get 16/9. Now, the whole purpose in doing all these steps is because now this trinomial here should be able to be factored as a square. So we have to think of what multiplies to 1/9 and adds to negative 2/3. And the reason why that shouldn't be too difficult is because the answer should be right here at step 3 if you are organizing your work. Negative 1/3 times negative 1/3 should multiply to 1/9, and it adds to the negative 2/3. So that's why we can write it as x minus 1/3 times x minus 1/3, which then can be written as x minus 1/3 to the second power because there's 2 of them. And now we have successfully completed the square. And now that we have completed the square, we can use our video notes from part 1 of this section, which tells us that we are allowed to square root both sides. Don't forget we need the plus or minus. When we put one of these into a problem, we need to put that there. So then, what times itself is 16/9. So the square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of 9 is 3. And then this will go away, leaving us just x minus 1/3. And then to get the x by itself, we're going to go ahead and add 1/3 to both sides. Okay, so now our final answer. We get 4/3 positive plus 1/3, and then we would get negative 4/3 plus 1/3. You can put that in your calculator, or because they have common denominators, I can just do 4 plus 1 is 5/3. And then negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3/3, which is negative 1. Okay, so That would be my exact answer, 5/3 and -1. And then approximate, if we put this 5/3 in our calculator, it's about 1.67 to the hundredth place. And then -1, you can't approximate that. So those would be our answers. Now if we want to check this, we need to go back to our original problem, and we would do 3 times, and I'm going to check the -1, so I need parentheses around the -1, and then squared, -2 times -1 minus 5. So I typed that all into my calculator, and when I click equals, it should say 0 if my answer is correct. So then I would know that the -1 is correct, and then I would do that again with 5/3 just to check that answer as well.